Okay, how about now? I think I figured it out. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. We are live this morning on the Huddle. We are live here on the Huddle. If I got to start this over, we'll start this over if I have to. Appreciate you, those of you who are just joining me in the chat. We're just going through some technical difficulty issues. Yes, we are live and we got audio. There we go. There we go. Yes, unfortunately, even the best of us are going to have live stream technical issues when you go live. It's a matter of how you respond when it happens. So without further ado, I know you've been waiting. I've been waiting. Let's get into these 10 tips on how to have a great interview with 10 great interview questions for your podcast, live stream show. Grab a pen, grab a pad. Let's go to work. Tip number 1. Simply, you need to do your homework. If you are going to bring a guest on for your live stream or for your podcast show, you need to do your homework before you ask them to come on. You said before? Yes. Don't do your homework after you ask the guest. Don't do your homework after you sent the email or the DM in Instagram. Do your homework first on the individual that you're looking to bring on before you ask them. Because that way, that lets the guest know, the potential guest know, that you did some homework on their background, on who they are, on their platform, if they have a podcast, if they have a live stream, or if they're on YouTube. That lets the guest know that you've did some homework on them. You've did some homework about the type of content they make. You've done some homework about them on who the audience, the target audience that they're reaching when they post videos on their platform. Do your homework. Doing your homework also lets the guests know that you are a person who's taking this serious and you value their time and you've spent the time to learn about the potential guests that you want to bring on. Another thing you want to do about doing your homework is do your homework on their achievements. The achievements on, if they're a co-author or an author of a book, if they are a large YouTuber that has over 1 million subscribers and over, 5 million views, do your homework. What's their origin story? How did they come about in doing what they're doing now? Do your homework. And then also in terms of, just do your homework, and in terms of, the work that they're looking, the projects that they're looking to do now in 2024. Since we're in 2024, what's the work? What's the projects that they're working on? What's the goals that they're doing? Do some homework before you bring them on. And so that way, if the individual is going to be a great fit for your podcast or your live stream show. I've been fortunate to interview some well-known names on YouTube so far, even as a small and growing channel. I've been fortunate to interview individuals like Benji Travis from Video Influencers and Benji Man TV. I've been fortunate to interview individuals like Dan Courier, who's the host of People of Video Conference and his Dan Courier YouTube channel. I've been fortunate enough to interview JP Hightech from Creators Unleash, who's a YouTube host and conference host, whose conference is going on right now this week. Okay, throw a little plug out for my man JP. But what makes a great interview on your podcast or your live stream show? Is it because you have a well-known, established name? Yeah, that plays a part of it. But guess what? You can have a great interview on your podcast and live stream name on an up-and-coming YouTuber, just like yourself in the chat. But I believe what makes a great podcast or a live stream show is the questions that you look to ask your potential guest. the questions that you ask. That's what makes the podcast or the live stream show a dynamic show that's going to connect with your audience, and that's going to be able to bring value, not just to your audience, but also to the guest audience that they bring also through the collaboration that you do. So do your homework if you want to have some great interview questions. My next tip simply is you want to ask open-ended questions. Open-ended questions will encourage details, a detailed response from your potential guest that you bring on. Open-ended questions keeps the conversation rich and provides rich content. Open-ended questions gives you the ability to allow the guest to be able to share, what's relevant and important versus asking closed-ended questions. And you want to avoid, for the most part, if you want to be able to ask great interview questions, you want to avoid closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions like, are you a person who likes chicken or fish? No, I don't like chicken. Yes, I like fish. Closed-ended questions. However, open-ended questions are questions where, again, like I said, you are encouraging a detailed response by simply asking a question of, like, one of the questions that I ask during my interviews is, tell me, Ender Trading in the chat, 3 things you wish you knew before you started on YouTube. Florence, in the chat, tell me 3 things you wish you knew before you started on YouTube. Those of you who are listening to me who have not got a chance to let me know where you're watching me from in the chat and give me a hashtag Team Live, get a second, pull over if you're driving, or if you're on the treadmill, on the gym, hit the pause button, get off the treadmill for a second, and give me 3 things you wish you knew before you started podcasting. Those types of responses with a C in front of the comments for me. So I see Ender Trading's in there in a second. I'm going to get to it. Those will encourage a rich, detailed response, and it's going to provide rich content for your viewers. That's how you end up putting together great interview questions so that you can have a great podcast and live stream show. Let's jump over here to the chat right quick. And we're going to start with, start from here. There we go. He says, the SEO guest you had on was a great show. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I will definitely look to, been looking to bring him back on. And so the simple fact that you've mentioned that, I will definitely reach out to him. Okay. Florence says, audio is working. Thank you. Looking for some responses. Live is happening. Definitely. Let's keep going. There we go. I think I see one. There we go. Let's see if I hit that one already. And how much I would have developed and grown, the connections I would have made all over and the world. And 3, how much work it is to plan and execute a show. That is a great response. And unfortunately, sometimes even the greats who've been doing this for a while, those of you who watch your favorite YouTuber or podcaster, they underestimate the statement that Florence is making. This takes work, putting together, sitting down and coming up with a great topic. You constantly hear individuals like Nick Nimmin always saying, if you want to be able to make great content that's going to get you more views, you have to spend the time planning and executing and putting together a live stream show, or for that matter, being able to put together a great video that's going to get the response and views that you want from the video. You got to put in the time. But again, you see, by asking an open-ended question, it gives me the ability also to be able to go deeper with that question, which we're going to get further into this tutorial, this session on interview questions. And then, which brings me to my next point, you want to follow the flow. You want to follow the flow of the conversation, the interview that's going. And part of putting together and planning be able to help you to be able to, from the homework and the research you did on the guest, to kind of put the questions together for your guest so that it will be able to provide, as we said at one point, a rich conversation between you and the guest and the audience that's watching live and on the replay. So you want to follow the interview flow. However, what I found in most interviews, as the flow is going, a point will be made where you, as the host, as you get more experience interviewing individuals, will say, hey, look, wait a minute, we need to put a pin here. We need to pivot here and go back to your last point. Your last point is a hot point. And we need to go back to this and go deeper into what you're saying here. Because you said something here in the trading here in during the live stream, or Florence, you said something during here in the podcast that we just can't gloss over. We got to go back and go a little deeper on that. Follow the flow of your conversation that you're having with your guests. However, I realize if you're just starting to get into doing podcasts and doing interviews through live streams, that's a skill you have to develop. That's something that you have to learn through time to be able to just, because you can get excited in bringing on, people you want to interview in the particular niche that you want to be able to share on YouTube. But it's something you got to learn. And when you start, if you're the type of individual like me, where you want to go after the Nick Nimmons and you want to go after the Sean Cannells and you want to go after the Darrell Eves and bring them on to interview them, or Roberto Blake, one of the things that I had to learn very quickly is don't get caught up in the fanboy syndrome. Don't get caught up in the fanboy syndrome. It's they're human beings, just like you are a human being. They put their pants on just like you put your pants on. They know how to say hello to and greet someone just like you know how to hello and greet someone. They've just been established and they've had some success at this and been doing this a lot longer than you have, Walter. And so I've had to teach myself, don't get caught up in the fanboy, because each guest I've learned that I bring on is just important as my good man Tech Troublemaker, who's in the chat, is important just as JP Hightech. My man James Hicks is just as important as my man John Lacey with live streaming with John Lacey. Don't get caught up in the fanboy, but follow the flow of the interview and be ready to pivot. And when you get a hot point during the live stream, stay on it and stay on that point until you've exhausted everything you need to hit on that point. Hey, if you're just joining me, we're talking about 10 tips on how to ask great interview questions for your podcast or live stream show. Do me a favor, if you have not already, click that like button for me. Share this on your favorite social media platform. And we're on the march to 400 subscribers this morning. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel of the Huddle, where we share tips and tools on making live streaming easy for you as a beginner, subscribe to the channel, click the alert notification button, join the conversation in the live chat. So I jump over to the chat. See another comment here from Tech. What you talking about? Nope. I am convinced Mr. Beast put his pants on different. You're convinced? Okay. All right, Tech. All right. When you get proof, you get evidence, you get some video footage on how Mr. Beast puts on his pants, his big boy pants, you let us know over here on the Huddle. Which brings us to our next point. You want to be able to personalize your questions for your guests. Again, when you're just starting out interviewing, if you're a type of live streamer or YouTuber or podcaster who does interviews, it's a great way to create engagement and to grow your podcast or your live stream. But a skill that you have to learn in asking questions is being able to personalize your questions, tailor your questions to your guests. And that kind of goes back to point number one. If you're just joining us, we talked about doing your homework about who your guest is, the platform they own, the audience that they're reaching, you know. And as you do your homework, then you can begin to tailor your questions, because there are some basic questions that I found that you can ask a guest that most people ask on most shows that I've seen and watched. I'm quite sure that you viewed and you've watched. But taking the time to personalize the questions lets the guest know, you know, the amount of time and effort you've invested on being to make this experience a positive one. Uh, Making it a positive experience so that 6 months from now, a year from now, when the guest is asked about your live stream or podcast show, the experience is a favorable one that they can speak on. So you want to tailor your questions. You want to make sure that it's valued and it's special. It's special. And then you want to again share about past work and interest that they're involved. You want to be able to personalize the questions. Now, again, if you're just starting at this takes some time. This takes some effort. One of the things that I've learned is before you start going out into the deep, sometimes it's best to kind of maybe interview family, interview friends, interview individuals within your community circle of influence on YouTube who's growing with you just as they're growing. And then by doing that, it teaches you, it helps you to be able to ask personalized questions. Let's continue on. Let's continue on. Create a story arc. Create a story arc using the power of story in asking your interview questions during your podcast and your live streams is a great way of asking great interview questions. A story arc that has a beginning, a story arc that has a middle, a story arc that has an end. I'll say that again. Wow, I like that. A story arc that has a beginning, a story arc that has a middle, a story arc that has an end. When you invest this type of effort in your questions, you are putting yourself in the position, you're putting your podcast and your live stream show in the position that it can be a memorable one. Make it a memorable interview. You know, Ender Trading talked about him watching the replay of the SEO guest that I had on, Paul Andre de Vera. Okay. Put a lot of work into that. And giving him the opportunity to be able to share his story, his origin story of how he got into SEO and how he got into YouTube. So creating a story arc is a great way for viewers 6 months, a year from now, to be able to say, that was a great interview. I got to go back and watch that. Got to go back and watch that. And staying on storytelling, the power of storytelling helps you as a host helps your guests to be humanized, someone that's relatable, someone that viewers can be able to connect with, and not just connect with, not just seeing them of, oh, yeah, that's the YouTuber. No, to be able to have a personal, deeper connection with them, because you're going to provide an opportunity at some point, if viewers have questions or if they want to learn more about your guests, you're going to give them an opportunity on how people can contact with them and learn more about them during the segment of your show, whether it's through social media, through their website, or through their platform of their podcast or their YouTube. And storytelling allows your questions to be presented to your guests in a way that it can be entertaining. And so creating a story arc and using the power of storytelling helps you and me to be able to ask great interview questions for your podcast or your live stream show. We are talking about 10 tips on how to ask great interview questions for your podcast and live stream show. So if you're just joining me, let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live. And if you haven't subscribed to the Huddle with Walter Strong III, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, click the alert notification button, join the conversation in the live chat or on the comments of the replay. Which brings us to our next tip, tip number 7. Create questions that lets your guests know that you value their opinion and you want to hear about their predictions. Create questions that gives them the opportunity to share their opinions and their predictions. You want to do that. You want to do that because too many times people who have shows that I have seen, some shows that I've seen, they will bring someone on for whatever their motives and their agendas was for bringing them on. And they ask the first question, the guest responds, and before you know it, it's all about the guest. No, I'm sorry, it's all about the host. Because the host now is on a tangent, sharing everything about what they think is important. And the guest is sitting there like, aren't you going to ask me another question? Don't you said you brought me on because you said I was the subject matter expert on this particular topic. But you're doing all the talking. You're doing all the talking. You ever had that experience as a guest on someone's show? Let me know in the chat. And as a result, the opinion of the guest is not valued. Their voice on what their predictions about on the topic in the future of things going on, it's not asked. But if you value and if you let your guests know that their opinion matters, that's the reason why I chose that photo to say your opinion matters. It provides the guest to share their unique insight, sparks interest, and gives the guests the opportunity to share their expertise. Tech has a comment here. He says, research your guests and ask questions. Ask questions that your community would want asked, and how does this guest benefit my community? Definitely. We talked about that earlier. And that goes back all the way to research. It goes back to research. It does. You got to do your research. Got another question, comment here. Great live stream audience. Click, yes, do me a favor, click that like button for me. And perfect. But you have to, as the host, as much as you want to put this podcast or live stream together to interview said person, you have to be able to create it in such a way where you can communicate to the guest that their opinion matters. And a great tip on being able to do that, I believe, is investing in the time and during a discovery call. Doing a discovery call helps you to be able to, before you press record, if it's a pre recorded video, before you hit the go live button, it gives you an opportunity to get to know the guest better through a conversation through Microsoft Teams, through Zoom, or through Google Meets. Gives you the opportunity to kind of meet with them and kind of share your thoughts on why you're putting them this show together and why you're bringing them on, and giving them an opportunity to collaborate with you, to be able to add something to the show. Because sometimes your best shows can come through a collaborative effort. And I understand sometimes people can be control freaks. People want to do everything, and they want to handle the graphics, they want to handle the thumbnails, and I respect that. I've come across that situation, but I found some of my best interviews also have happened because of me collaborating and sharing, my graphics, and saying, here's the thumbnail that I'm looking to create for the show. Here's the flyer that I'm looking to put together, to share on social media, and I want to get your thoughts. And then when they come back and say, hey, look, this can be better, you got to be willing to not allow your ego and your pride to get all bent out of shape. Because if you're going to let your pride and your ego get bent out of shape, then what you're trying to do may not be a good thing to do at that particular moment until you work on yourself. Because it's going to come across in the podcast and in the live stream show at some point. It's just going to come out in an unexpected way where it's going to be uncomfortable for you. It's going to be uncomfortable for your guests, and it's going to be uncomfortable for your audience in the live and in the replay. And then you're wondering why people are dropping off and not watching the entire show. Tech has a question. He says, I have had a guest failed my I've had a guest who failed my community, and I've had to fill the gap to make sure that the show was delivered with value. Yes, that can happen. That can happen. But I would also say, and I'm just going to speak for me, Tech, when I've encountered that type of situation, I don't encounter it a lot. It's been a while since I've encountered something like that. It was because I didn't do enough research on the guest. I took certain things for granted in not doing a discovery call with the guest. Because some individuals sometimes are not, we talked about being comfortable on camera. There's some individuals that are not comfortable being on camera, and that's okay. But you got to be able to kind of understand why they're not comfortable being on camera. And doing a live stream or podcast of sorts, being a podcast, let's say if it's video podcast, because if it's an audio podcast, that's not a issue there. But if it's a video podcast or a live stream and the individual is not comfortable being on camera, you need to do some research on why they're not, because they may have some concerns and issues. And when I didn't do a discovery call on one particular individual who had that scenario, it turned the show in being a very awkward experience for the guest and for my audience. So food for thought, which brings us now to tip number 8. Get ready for this one. If you're watching the replay up to this point, give me a hashtag team replay in the comment section. And if you're watching live, give me a hashtag team live. Get ready for this question. Be willing to address the elephant in the room. You may bring on a guest who may, at that particular moment in that season, they may be having some conversation going on about them, and the conversation is not all that positive, or what they are involved in is not all that positive, but yet you move forward and bringing them on. Well, if your audiences did their homework and they know who that person is and bringing on, your audience is going to look to you and being the representative to share their voice to the guest and being willing to address the elephant in the room. It can be regarded a controversial topic that they've shared their opinion. Again, we go back to opinions matter. Opinions matter. And so if the person feels strongly about a particular topic that's very controversial and it fits within your platform of your show to address the elephant in the room, be willing to do it. Not just for more likes, not more for more clicks, not more for to get more subscribers. You brought them on to interview them so viewers and your audience can get to know them better. They may have a position on a controversial topic based on the platform of your show and the niche audience and of your YouTube channel that discusses those types of topics that would require you to address the elephant. To ignore the elephant in the room on that controversial topic, unfortunately, can cause your viewers to be let down on what they were looking for from you on your show. And that's why your opening hook, I believe, is so important. Your opening hook is so important. You also, though, have to be tactful in how you address the elephant in the room. You got to be tactful. But most importantly, by addressing the elephant in the room, over time, viewers will come to appreciate you, and guests who get future invites from you, who have the ability to go back and to watch your live streams. They have the ability to see that you are willing to ask the tough questions. And again, that's why discovery calls are so important. I really believe discovery calls are so important. They're so important. You got to be able to do that. You got to be able to do that. Just pulling up a few comments. Hashtag Team Live. Thank you. So be willing to address the elephant in the room. And if you're the type of platform who has a podcast and a live stream show, video, or audio, and if not, it's an elephant, be willing to address the giraffe in the room, because the topic or the subject matter can be so long. If you created the platform in the way that it needs to be created, if you need to go as long as you need to go with it, address the giraffe in the room. Whatever it is, be willing to address it and be willing to take on the tough questions in a very tactful way. Let's go back over here. Boom. Tip number 9, incorporate your listeners' questions. Be willing to incorporate your listeners' questions. Those of you who are in the chat, or those you may have individuals who watch your live stream shows, they may submit to you a question in advance that they may look to you to want to ask your guests. Whether if you're going to use a Google Sheets or Google Docs or Microsoft Word or whatever your platform system is, where guests can submit questions ahead of time, incorporate your listeners' questions. Some of your listeners' questions can turn out to be, again, great questions that you can ask during your podcast and your live stream. Also incorporate chat questions, those that are live because the questions that are either submitted in advance or the questions that are submitted in the chat all provide a fresh perspective that can get your guests to share open-ended questions that will encourage a detailed response. My final tip, be willing to be an active listener. Be an active listener. Practice active listening. So many times as individuals, we want to interview someone on our podcast and our live streams. And again, we make it about ourselves instead of making it about the guest, because the guest is the subject matter expert that you brought on. But when you make it about yourself and not your guest, and you don't make it about your audience, you are not fully present. You're just fully present on what you want. You're not fully present on what's going on and what's going on about the flow of the show. You're not fully present. And you're not listening careful enough to be able to realize when you need to pivot as you're doing your run of show. You're not actively listening to understand when a follow-up question is appropriate. If you're a show that you want to be able to have things done in a 30-minute time frame because you're going to repurpose that show, you got to be an active listener, practice acting listening, so you can understand when it's appropriate to ask follow-up questions. So, in summary, we talked about 10 tips. Here's the first 5. Be willing to do your homework. Ask open-ended questions. Be able and willing to follow the flow of the live stream or podcast show through the questions that you're asking. Personalize your questions. Create a story arc. My next 5. Use the power of storytelling. Let your guests know that you value their opinions and you want to hear about their predictions on the particular topic that you're sharing with your audience and their audience. Be willing to address the elephant in the room. Be willing to incorporate your listeners' questions that are submitted before the show goes live or before you press record in your pre-recorded video, and practice active listening. If you do these 10 things, if you practice these 10 things over time, you're going to be able to ask great interview questions in your podcast and in your live stream. Questions. I know I've been kind of responding to some questions and some comments in the chat, but here's the part where we talked about incorporating your listeners' questions. And so I would love to hear your feedback. So we're going to go ahead and stop this and go full screen. As I see one here already. We've been talking about 10 tips on how to have and do and to share great interview questions. Okay, I think I did this one. Okay. Okay. So as I'm waiting for your questions or your comments, let me know in the chat where you're watching me from. Give me a hashtag Team Live. And if you're watching the replay up to this point, truly appreciate it. Thank you for even watching the replay up to this point, despite some of the technical issues, the audio issues that we were having earlier. Thank you for pressing through. Got to make a decision on if I want to cut off that first part and start from there. I know when you cut off in the video YouTube editor, you end up losing your chat. So I got to look at that if I'm going to have to do that because I want to make a positive experience on the replay. So yeah, it looks like I'm going to have to probably cut off that first part of the audio issues. How far in advance, question from Florence, how far in advance do you ask potential guests to appear? Great question. Great question. For myself, I try to plan out inviting a guest within, I want to say 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks, because I realize we are all busy. We all have responsibilities. We are all either podcasters, content influencers, or YouTubers. And being able to give 4 to 6 weeks gives the individual to, if I get a response back from you within asking within that 4 to 6 week period, if I get a response back from you, and if it's a favorable one that you're interested, then I have a time frame to be able to operate and say, okay, if I've asked certain things from you, such as your profile, your short bio, I've kind of given you some information on what the show is going to be about, and what the topic and some of the questions that I'm thinking about asking you. It gives me the ability to, get a quicker response so that I can start working. So I typically go to 4 to 6 weeks out and asking them, what is your follow up? What is your follow up workflow after the guest appearance? Another great question. Oh, she's coming with some gems this morning, gem questions. Some of my workflow process up after the show is immediately sending a thank you email to you. I haven't, I've kind of in the past, let me put the response in this perspective, in this way. In the past, I would immediately send you a thank you for being on the show. Especially if this is your first time, I would also in that thank you email send you a copy of the link to the YouTube channel, just in case if you don't have access for whatever reason to the episode. I would also the thank you, and ask if there's any follow-up things that you would need from me, as far as a copy of the show, by downloading a copy of it. And if you need a copy of it, download it, and kind of go from there, and look to try to, schedule if it's a favorable opportunity to bring you on as a second time. So that's some of my workflow, part of as a follow-up. In the trading asks, do you send your guests questions before the show? Yes, I do. Great question. I do. Because again, part of the personalizing the questions, if there's something that I need to change, or if it's something that you in the trading may not be comfortable in sharing at that moment, I can adjust the questions. And so again, kind of goes back to Florence's, how far do you reach out to someone? 4 to 6 weeks. Once I get that first initial response, the other thing I let you know, and as I'm waiting for your bio, as I'm waiting for your profile and social media links, websites, to kind of let you know in terms of, here's some of the questions that I'm going to look to ask if there's something you want to share and discuss. So I do all of that to be able to send those questions to you. And if you're fine with them, you'll kind of let me know. If I need to make some adjustments, I'll make some adjustments. Great question, though. Want to say good morning to Simplifying Success, Mr. AKA Ash Bolin, all the way from London. So good to see you, my good man. Good man. And this man here, he again, we talked about a couple of weeks ago about pre-recorded videos. Sometimes your guests can't be able to go live with you. So what's the next best thing? Being able to do pre-recorded videos. And being able to do pre-recorded video helps you to be able to ask some great interview questions from the homework that you have put in. So it's all about putting in the work, putting in the effort. And I believe being able to have a great podcast or live stream show, whether if it's live or pre-recorded, it's not just about how big or established the guest is. I believe, yes, that plays a part of it, because if I bring on someone like Mr. Beast, chances is, yes, I could have the potential of Mr. Beast. If I do my homework, I reach out to him properly. You got to learn how to reach out to a guest properly. If you're going to bring someone on and you're connected with them in their community of their Facebook group, you're connected with them through some other community, that you have access to them, don't just turn around and just spam them in the DM of the social media platform. Will you be on my show? Will you be on my show? Be able to reach out to a guest properly. You say, how do I reach out to a guest properly when I don't have their email address? Well, the YouTube channel, yes, is a great place to start by subscribing to their channel, being a part of the conversations that they have during their shows, live stream shows, or commenting on the videos. Those are all great starting points. But also look to connect with them on another social media platform. I look to try to connect with most people on LinkedIn first. That's going to be my first starting point. If you're connected on LinkedIn, then once we connect on LinkedIn, because it's a professional platform, a professional networking platform, it's a great place to start, to reach out to you. And I've been fortunate. Again, I've told the story before, as I connected with Benji Travis, co-author of YouTube Secrets and video influencers, YouTube channel, and Benji Man TV. Once we connected, I spent time responding to a lot of his comments and posts on LinkedIn. And then once I got the courage and I overcame the imposter syndrome, I then reached out to him in the DM and shared my thoughts on why I wanted to bring him on as a guest. We had a discovery call. We talked about what the show was going to be about, who my audience was, or who my potential audience was, then who I was trying to reach. And we had the show. And a great 30-minute interview. We talked about some things that originally got him involved into YouTube before he ended up being who he is today, like being involved with breakdance, and how he used to use YouTube as a way to find out about other individuals who are into b-boy or breakdancing, and how he used to learn about their other styles and talents. And YouTube ultimately grew on him to the point that when his wife, Judy, through Judy Time, her channel blew up, and how he ended up becoming her manager, I ended up learning so much, all by learning how to reach out to him properly, being able to have a discovery call, bringing him on, and having a great show. Questions, comments, thoughts on learning how to ask great interview questions, let me know in the chat. If you are getting great value out of this conversation this morning, back here 11 o'clock Saturday morning, here on the Huddle YouTube, subscribe to the channel, click the alert notification button, join the conversation in the live chat this morning, just like my man, the bearded mortgage broker, joining us this morning as well. Appreciate it, Ash. Thank you. Welcome. The Huddle So while we are looking to bring this train into the station, we would be neglectful and not providing you an opportunity. A lot of you've been sharing your thoughts and your comments in the comment section in the chat. What's your win of the week? What's your win of the week from a content creation standpoint or on this topic? What has been a win for you in what we discussed in these 10 tips? What's your win or your aha moment? We normally do wins of the week. So what's your aha moment this morning? Let me pull this back up if you're just joining me. And I'll go back over what we talked about. There we go. We talked about doing your homework. We talked about the importance of asking open-ended questions, following the flow, personalizing your questions, creating a story arc, using the power of storytelling, letting your guests know that their opinion matters and you want to hear about their predictions, being willing to be willing to address the elephant in the room, be willing to incorporate your listeners' questions, and practice active listening. What's your aha moment this morning here? And these 10 tips that we've shared before we go off the air, I want to hear from you. What's your 10 tips? What's your aha moment of these 10 tips? Definitely. No problem, sir. Always got love for you. What's your 10 tips? And if your aha moment says, man, I got to work on what's the one thing out of these 10 tips that we've shared that if you're the type of person who has to interview guests on your show, or if you're doing panel discussions, what's your aha moment? I want to hear from the audience this morning. Want to get your feedback because this lets me know that this has been some content for you this morning, not just for you in the live chat, but even on the replay. And as I'm waiting for that, I'm so glad to be back on 11 o'clock Saturday morning. Had a period of time where I had to kind of change up times, had a lot of doctor's appointments that I had to attend. My wife was really on me about my health. And after getting beat up enough by my wife and my daughter and just good friends in my ear, I had to go ahead and get to go see the doctor. And so I was seeing a lot of Saturday morning appointments that had me, but all is well. All my tests came back negative. So after those appointments, it also gave me an opportunity just to explore a new time frame and just to see what type of response I would get by going Saturday morning. So it gave me an opportunity to do that. But once my appointments were over, and now any future doctor appointments, I can pretty much do them at 8 to 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the morning and be back in time for my show at 11. Now that I've been able to establish that, we're back now Saturday morning. I've interviewed people on stage and in the prep work, but also reaching well. Okay, let me read that over. But also reaching well their responses, but also reaching well their responses. Okay, definitely understand. Rather if you're doing interviews in person or online, you gotta put in some prep work. You got to put in some prep work. Now, I believe that as the bidded mortgage broker is saying, because if this is something new to you, being able to interview family and friends really should be your practice time and bring someone to interview. Being able to share, maybe you have a family member who is an author of a book and sharing, what led to them writing this book. Why did they feel it was necessary, to lend their voice to the conversation on this topic? prep work to be able to ask those types of questions. What was some of the struggle and challenges that they had before the book got published? Being able to do that with family and friends, so that way now when you're interviewing someone on your YouTube channel in the niche that you're doing it with, will help you to be able to be put in a better position to be successful and be able to ask better and great interview questions. So yes, I want to do that. Wait, just waiting. If I don't see any other responses, stage. Okay, so that we just put that up. So, all right, we are at the 1 hour mark of this live stream, and so if you are watching the replay of this, or if you're just joining me live and will be watching the replay of this, definitely going to have to trim off the beginning of this because the audio, for whatever reason, had me muted. And so we want to create a positive replay experience for our replay viewers. So we don't want anyone dropping off early in watching the replay. So the chat won't be available. So I do apologize for that technical issue on my part. Yes, live happens, but I wanted to apologize to my replay viewers for being not being able to see the beginning of it. But you'll get right into the content. So we're gonna go ahead and bring this train into the station. I want to thank Ash. I want to thank Tech. I want to thank Ender Trading, my moderator Florence, for and those of you who've been listening. If you've just been watching and haven't been able to engage in the chat, it's okay. Make sure you give me a hashtag Team Live or Team Replay in the comments section and click that thumbs up button for me. And so we're going to go ahead and bring this train into the station, and we will see you next week here on the Huddle. Hey, YouTube is going to show you a video you should watch, or you can check us out in our next video or live stream. God bless. I want this one.